Hey everyone, Israel is currently in a war against the terror organization Hamas, and we know how hard it can be to keep up with all the news. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of the latest developments out of Israel, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review. And Israel has long maintained that Iran was involved in the October 7th terrorist attack, as well as in funding and supplying Hamas and, of course, Hezbollah's terror activities. And now the IDF has said it has found proof of an underground missile factory linking Iran directly to Hamas. Let's take a look. The IDF cleared for publication on Sunday that its Nahal brigade recently uncovered a precision-guided missile factory in an underground terror tunnel in the Darash Tufah neighborhood in northern Gaza. The underground factory, located in a 100-meter-long tunnel, was being used to improve Hamas's rockets and build precision components. The facility was heavily guarded, and the IDF said that during the raid, soldiers eliminated many terrorists in short-range battles. In addition to the factory, soldiers found vests, weapons parts, explosives, and even an UNRWA membership card. After finding the factory as part of the IDF's intelligence efforts, it said that components were found that prove that Hamas terrorists learned under Iranian guidance how to create and build such precision components and strategic weapons, and gained technological knowledge in the field. The IDF did not divulge the evidence uncovered, but Hebrew media reported the army found Iranian training manuals and other evidence linking the Iranian regime to the site. Israel has long accused Iran of attempting to supply precision missile technology to its terror proxy group Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, with this finding, it has discovered Iran was attempting to supply the technology to Hamas as well.
Day 96 of the war in Gaza, and the IDF is expanding ground operations in the Hamas stronghold of Khan Yunis. Israel is also taking steps to ensure that Gazan civilians are not harmed and that ample humanitarian aid is reaching those in need. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The army has now reached deep into the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis, bringing them ever closer to Hamas leadership, still in and under the city amid ongoing battles street by street. Some 40 Hamas operatives were killed in Khan Yunis in recent clashes, and troops uncovered a wide range of weapons and tunnel shafts. The Air Force targeted terrorist sites in and around the city. An airstrike also targeted a Hamas cell in Magassi in central Gaza, and naval strikes were directed at targets along the coast. Meanwhile, the IDF released details of its initial probe of a deadly blast in the central Gaza Strip, in which 6 combat engineers were killed and several other soldiers wounded.
אתמול חשפנו באל בורג' את מפעל הייצור הרקטות ואמצעי הלחימה הגדול ביותר של החמאס. במהלך הפעילות המבצעית להשמדת התשתית התת-קרקעית של המפעל, נגרם פיצוץ כתוצאה מירי טנק שזיהה מטרת אויב בשטח. ככל הנראה, פגז של הטנק פגע בעמוד חשמל סמוך שגרם להפעלת המטען. מהפיצוץ נהרגו 6 לוחמי צה"ל ו14 לוחמים נפצעו.
As the war continues, the IDF is increasing efforts to ensure that ample humanitarian aid reaches Gazan civilians. This, as Hamas continues to use civilians as human shields against IDF attacks.
In this war that Hamas started, we are concerned because our war is against Hamas, not against the people of Gaza. We're going to live next to them. This might not fit the narrative told on TV or TikTok, but our actions are proof that we care more about the people of Gaza than Hamas, who sees the suffering of their own people as a strategy. We are ready and willing to facilitate as much humanitarian aid as the world will give.
The war in Gaza is to defeat Hamas in order to allow Israel and Gaza to live as peaceful neighbors.
We coordinate daily humanitarian corridors and implement specific tactical pauses in our operations to support the aid distribution efforts. We will not lose sight, not for a second, of our humanity as we pursue our mission to free our hostages from Hamas and free Gaza from Hamas.
In Samaria, an Israeli man was shot and killed in a terrorist shooting, and a female border police woman was killed during an anti-terror operation in Jenin. And ILTV's Steve Leibowitz reports.
The victim of the terrorist shooting in Samaria was found mortally wounded in his car on Route 465 between the settlements of Eli and Ofra. Medics declared the victim dead at the scene. In footage, the Israeli-Arab civilian victim was seen slumped in the driver's seat of his silver Volkswagen with several bullet holes in the windshield. The apparent drive-by terrorist shooting occurred between Atarot and Route 60, the main north-south artery in an area named for an old British police station from pre-state days. This was the first deadly attack in Judea and Samaria since November, although there have been several attempted attacks with victims wounded. A manhunt is underway for the shooters. The incident follows a deadly clash between security forces and terrorists in the city of Jenin. 4 border police were injured by a roadside bomb detonated during an overnight counter-terror op in the city. One of the wounded border policewomen died of her wounds. Sergeant Shai Girmay, age 19, was in the vehicle hit by the roadside bomb during the raid, along with 3 of her comrades, who were moderately injured. During the extraction of the wounded officers, an attack helicopter carried out an airstrike against a group of Palestinian terrorists, hurling explosives at the troops. 6 terrorists were killed in the airstrike. Since October 7th, troops have arrested more than 2,600 wanted Palestinians across Judea and Samaria, including more than 1,300 affiliated with Hamas. Some 300 Palestinian terrorists have been killed in the territories in that same period.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple. And now, joining us today in the studio is Micah Laken Avni, an Israeli businessman, attorney, and activist. He serves as the chairman of Voices of Israel, a public-private partnership aimed at combating anti-Israel sentiment. In October 2015, Micah's father, Richard Laken, was murdered by Hamas terrorists in an attack on bus number 78 in Jerusalem. After his father was murdered, Micah wrote an op-ed in the New York Times entitled "The Facebook Intifada," which was one of the first times the role of social media in the spread of terror was brought to light. Since then, he's led a successful campaign to get Hamas and Hezbollah removed from mainstream social media. Micah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Lida.
So can you tell us a little bit about the terrorist attack that murdered your father and about your experiences?
Sure. So my father was a kind, gentle person, a retired elementary school principal. He was on a bus riding home from a doctor's appointment one day in Jerusalem, and 2 Hamas terrorists boarded the bus and shot him and stabbed him brutally. He was in intensive care, unconscious for 10 days. I sat by his side that entire time, and the day after he was attacked, Hamas put out a reenactment video where they showed how the attack took place, and it was an instructional video to teach children, little kids, how to go out and do similar attacks. And that video went completely viral, and it was seen tens of millions of times around the world on Facebook and on YouTube. And during the time I was sitting next to my father's bed as he was dying, I started studying this, and I saw that terror had just run rampant on social media. Hamas, Hezbollah were inciting people, they were recruiting people, they were raising money. It was all over the place, and nobody was talking about it. And I had this burning energy to do something about it, and I decided to try to create a pressure storm to stop it. I started writing op-ed pieces in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, many other places. I appeared on television in the United States on almost every channel. I helped initiate lawsuits. I helped produce movies, spoke at universities, Harvard, Yale, and it brought the issue to light. Many other people started talking about it, and there was so much pressure placed on Facebook and YouTube that they eventually retained executive-level vice presidents and put policies in place, retained thousands of people to monitor social media to remove terror. And within 2 years, you could no longer find Hamas or Hezbollah or ISIS on mainstream social media. So I saw that we were able to have an impact on that. It was something that I did personally together with lots of pro-Israel organizations. Governments didn't really take part in this. And so it sort of ended there. And then I kind of went back to my day job.
And so, I want to fast forward to October 7th, 2023. What role has social media played in this war? I mean, it seems as though Israel is really losing on the social media front. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Sure. So we're losing in a big way. And the first thing you need to do if you want to deal with a problem is say it out loud. We're losing in a big way. We're getting creamed. If you look at the numbers on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube, it doesn't matter where, the anti-Israel rhetoric and the supporters of our enemies are just running rampant, and they're outnumbering us 10 to 1, 100 to 1. It depends where you're looking. And so you have to ask, how does that happen? Why are they able to do that? And there's a few reasons that happen. First off, they put a lot of planning into it. They understood that information can be used in warfare, and so they weaponized social media, something that here in Israel we did not understand on a government level, on a military level. So they put a lot of planning into it. They put a lot of money into it. And they've taken advantage of a couple things that social media allows. One is fake news, that you can say anything you want. So you can just say, Gaza is an open-air prison, Israel is doing genocide, and you can repeat that 1,000,000 times. That's the first thing. Second thing that social media allows is to create an echo chamber. So if you see somebody's bought into that, you can start to pump them with that, and you can say it 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways, and it becomes a reality for them. The third thing is technology. It's bots. You can basically create fictitious accounts to impact the algorithms on social media, and our enemies have spent lots of time and money preparing for this moment. So on October 7th, immediately after this started happening, social media went wild, and it didn't go wild just because of the event. It went wild because there were bots in place and ready to start attacking us and start putting out this anti-Israel propaganda.
So essentially a war on another front. And how do we change this trajectory? I mean, how can Israel win this information war, this social media war?
Okay, so we have to change it, first of all, because we need international support. We need American support to back us up in our war against terror and jihadists. So after we recognize the problem, we need to recognize that it's a war and that it's not social media as we understand it at home. I'll just make a video and share it with my friends and that will have some influence. It's war, so we need to treat it as such. And that means combating our enemies in warlike manners. It may mean influencing algorithms within social media companies, actually attacking our enemies and social media companies to shift these things. Because the fact that TikTok promotes Palestinian rhetoric 100 times more than Israeli is an actual attack on our sovereignty as a country, and we have to fight back. So we need to fight back on a technology level, and we have the ability to do it, but it requires a government to prioritize that. Also, lots of money needs to be spent doing this. There's just no way around it. To counter all this stuff, you need massive, massive investment in distribution of content, creation of content, and actual technology, which is not being spent. And finally, I think there's the issue of regulation. So I talked about this for years, that we need to regulate social media. In America, it really started to gain ground. Donald Trump, right before he lost the election, started talking about changing Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which is basically the blanket protection that social media companies get. He didn't make that happen. Joe Biden, after he was elected, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times suggesting the same change. The social media has become so strong in America and their lobby so powerful that they didn't allow that to happen yet. But basically, it will need to be regulated if we want to ever stop this.
And so you have a very deep understanding of the field. I mean, how do you see social media impacting Israel moving forward?
Okay, so our existence is very deeply tied in to the success of Western civilization and Western democracy. And social media is basically undermining Western civilization. It's creating massive, massive polarization within the United States, within Europe, and within Israel. And it's doing that for the reasons I mentioned, because they don't have any standard of truth that they're accountable to. They create these echo chambers, and they're just so big. Amazon is actually a threat to the American government. They control so much information, so much data. Facebook is a threat to the government. They control more information and more data than we can possibly conceive. And there's actually a battle going on now between the social media titans and the American government, and we're going to have to see who wins. And if the American government doesn't move forward and regulate social media in the very near future, they're going to lose. And we in Israel are at the forefront of this. We're sort of the canary in the coal mine. And we need to take the first step. We need to talk about regulation here in Israel. And I've lobbied Knesset members before and ministers, and I've spoken to almost everybody, and they just don't see the problem. And
regulation really does seem to be the key moving forward.
Yes.
Micah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me.